When you're trying to rebuild and regrow a relationship, or even trying to get your ex back, honesty is absolutely crucial to make sure that you're doing it in the right way, you're building it back in a healthy way. The problem is that there are very easy traps to fall into when you're trying to be emotionally honest, especially when you're trying to repair a relationship. So in this video, I'm going to break down the main emotional honesty traps that so many people fall into when they're trying to repair a relationship, and I'm going to talk about what to do instead. So I deal with a lot of members who are wanting to repair a relationship, and they don't want to be dishonest, right? They don't want to lie to their partner about their feelings, about their thoughts, about their intent. The problem is that when a relationship is in a difficult spot and emotional safety is broken down, when we're trying to be honest, we can fall into very easy traps. And the problem is that these traps feel right. They feel like they're the right thing to do, but ultimately they end up pushing a partner further and further away, causing less repair or even damage to a relationship that you're trying to save. So how can you be emotionally honest in an effective way that actually repairs a relationship? What are these honesty traps that break down a relationship? The first main one is mistaking emotional intensity for honesty. This trap is very easy to fall into. A lot of people confuse being loud, being emotional, or being intense with being honest and being vulnerable. You know, we can think that it's okay that I'm passionate and that I shout and that I get upset with my partner. It's okay that I raise my voice. It's okay that I speak for 15 minutes about how much she hurt me. It's okay that I cry, that I yell, that I vent a flood of feelings, that I create this fire hose of feelings and think to myself, you know, I'm being so real right now. But actually, this is usually just feeling overwhelmed or reactive. The reason why this is such a trap is that intensity of feelings alone doesn't mean truth or connection. It doesn't mean honesty. When your emotions are running completely unchecked, they create confusion. They make it hard for other people to understand what you actually need or what you feel. And this ends up doing the opposite. It creates an emotional noise because it pushes people away. It's not very clear what you're feeling, and it can become quite overwhelming to experience. And ultimately, this can shut down any real meaningful conversations. And if you're trying to repair a relationship, having meaningful conversations, deliberate, specific conversations are going to be crucial. The thing is that if you want to be emotionally honest and vulnerable, like I've spoken about in previous videos, this requires you to be grounded. This requires you to know very clearly how you're feeling and being able to express it clearly, not just flooding the environment with emotional chaos. So as an example of this, let's say your partner or your ex-partner gives you a tough truth, and suddenly you start yelling, you start getting defensive, or you start crying. You're allowing your emotions to overwhelm you, and you're not specifically being honest about what you're feeling. The next trap is using vulnerability to avoid any sort of accountability. So this trap is very easy to fall into, and it's very, very common. I've briefly touched on this before, but here, using honesty to avoid your own accountability. So here, honesty becomes a shield. So instead of honestly owning your mistakes or your behaviors, you're leaning heavily onto your feelings, past trauma, or your insecurities as an excuse to dodge personal responsibility. This is a trap because real emotional honesty, being able to be truthful about your feelings, means being willing to feel uncomfortable feelings and take responsibility for them. So using your feelings as a way to block feedback or avoid change keeps you stuck. It creates a defensive barrier around you where you can just use your feelings as a way to not hear things that you don't like to hear. So let's say your ex-partner is saying, hey, I don't want to get back with you because I don't feel emotionally safe around you. I don't want to get back with you because I'm not attracted to you. I don't want to get back together because I don't trust you. If you're using this emotional honesty as a way to shut down that conversation or tell your partner why they're wrong, this is ultimately not taking accountability. You're not looking at your own actions. You're not being able to validate what your partner is saying. If you jump in with, hey, that really hurt my feelings, or I can't believe you said that, or that's such a horrible thing to say, or I feel so let down by you. You know, it's not fair that you're saying that right now. You know I'm going through a really tough time. This is ultimately blocking any sort of feedback, and you're not actually looking at your actions and taking accountability. Ultimately, this tells your partner or your ex-partner, you can't hold me accountable because I'm fragile. And this prevents real connection and real repair for the relationship. And this can happen in many different forms. For example, let's say you cheated on your partner and they broke up with you as a result. And you're saying, I did it because I'm hurt. Well, you just deserve better. I'm so broken inside. I'm a bad person. I'm really fucked up. I feel so guilty. I feel so bad. But you're using that as a replacement to actually change. I get a lot of messages and comments from people who are saying, I'm trying to repair my relationship. I took accountability, but they're not coming back to me. Problem is that a lot of people take accountability in a way where they say they've done something wrong and they give a long list of excuses as to why they did it, but they don't actually take any action. The problem with that is that, let's say, for example, you cheated on your partner and you regret it. Taking accountability isn't just saying, hey, I know I screwed up and I'm sorry. That's not taking real accountability. Accountability involves taking action. So if you're giving a long list of excuses as to why you screwed up, but you've not actually made tangible changes and have a plan to grow past that challenge, then that's not really accountability. And a lot of the time, this can manifest in people blaming their past trauma every time they mess up. Or the reason why I did this is because I have this trigger, because my parents spoke to me in this way, or an ex-partner did this to me. But the truth is that being emotionally honest involves working on and healing that past trauma and adjusting your actions. The next trap is not being emotionally honest with yourself. A lot of people make this mistake, assuming that vulnerability, emotional honesty is only about saying deep things or emotional things or sharing your feelings out loud. But the truth is that emotional honesty is also about what you do, not what you say. And the trap with this is that words alone don't create trust. It doesn't repair a relationship and it doesn't heal. You can talk about your feelings endlessly, but never really change your behavior. If you're trying to win back your partner, you're trying to repair the relationship and trying to be emotionally honest, this is about being emotionally honest with yourself, learning about your emotions, getting uncomfortable with your emotions, sitting in the discomfort of those hard to deal with emotions and taking action on them. It can be very easy to say, I'm sorry. And a lot of people think, well, that's vulnerable. That's emotionally honest, right? I said that I'm sorry. But if you keep repeating the same behavior, then that apology falls flat. If you talk about how much you've changed or how much you want to change, but you still repeat the same patterns, you avoid difficult conversations, or you can't take feedback, then that, again, is not emotional honesty. It's just words. You're not being honest with yourself. And this is where a lot of my members have started with. They have fallen for these traps, thinking that they are doing good in the relationship, thinking that they're rebuilding it by being honest, but it's a very ineffective way of being emotionally honest. And learning how to communicate this from both an internal and an external way is going to be really crucial. So I'm going to touch a little bit on how to do that in a second, but obviously there's only so much that I can go into in depth in a YouTube video. So if you do want to start your journey and join the members and I, then join my Relationship Bootcamp, where you're going to learn the same fundamental steps that all of my successful members start with to start reconciling, rebuilding, and regrowing your relationship from the ground up. I'll leave the link in the description if you want to join us. So how can you avoid these vulnerability traps? There's three main steps to do this. The first is to ground yourself first. This is learning how to regulate your emotions. Now, I've done a few videos on this on how to manage your emotions, how to master your emotions in order to repair a relationship. But just briefly, making sure that before you share, before you're being honest, before opening up, taking a second to breathe and get clear and specific as to what you are feeling internally. This is an internal process first. And name that emotion. Naming your emotion helps you to express yourself with honesty, not just raw intensity. And this stops you from overwhelming your partner, and it makes sure that your honesty is a clear connective signal and not just, an emotional fire hose. But the next step is to make sure you're owning your part, taking responsibility without hiding behind those feelings. So when you are expressing yourself, acknowledging your feelings is one thing, but acknowledging the other person's feelings, your partner's feelings, is the next thing. Don't use your emotions or your history as an excuse to dodge accountability. Be willing to say, hey, I think that I felt this in the moment, but I think the way that I acted had this impact on you. Emotions are not just one person or the other. Emotions can coexist. You could have felt hurt in one moment, but your partner could also have felt hurt. And it's important to as you build this emotional intelligence, to understand that these are not one or the other. It's not black and white. These two things coexist. This helps you to be emotionally honest, but emotionally honest within the context of the entire relationship, not just centered around yourself. And this keeps your emotional honesty real whilst also allowing your partner in on this process of honesty. The main step is to make sure that you're showing up through action. If you want to be honest and you want to rebuild this connection, making sure that your behavior is matching your words. Being emotionally honest isn't just about what you say, it's about what you do, making sure that you are sincere with your apology and you're keeping your promises. You're setting real expectations as to how you're going to show up and where you want to go. Putting in consistent effort shows emotional maturity, and this creates a real connection. This builds emotional safety, which I've done a deeper dive video on, which I'll link to up above and in the description down below. Building emotional safety through true emotional honesty will cultivate that for your partner. And as a result of that, that will also allow your partner to generate that for you. But you have to lead the emotional safety feedback loop first. It always has to start with you in order to cultivate that and create that environment for you both to feel emotionally safe in a relationship. So I'm going to leave you with that deep dive video on emotional safety, and I'll see you over there.